Captain's Log, Stardate 99982.5. 3 episodes into our season-long mission of exploring these strange new worlds, I, Captain Shaw, find myself with a re-energized spirit and sense of adventure. I'm sure Captain Vactor will agree that Strange New Worlds has brought the best of past Trek into the present. Oh, yeah, that's right. Welcome back to TREKnological.
Yeah.
A Star Trek shakedown. This is Mission 13. We are recording this on Friday, May 20th. And we just want to say thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about Strange New Worlds, Ghosts of Illyria, which is the 3rd episode of Strange New Worlds. We will also be hitting you with a ton of Star Trek news. So much so that we're just going to have to throw it right in the episode description because there's just too much to talk about.
I can't believe it.
So with that in mind, we just want to say thank you so much for listening. Of course, what we're all about, we are 2 hardworking dads, and we love Star Trek, and we love our families. And so we try to make time for both. And we do that by making sure our podcast episodes are around 30 to 45 minutes. So it's a much more consumable bit of content, but it gives us an opportunity to meet every week and talk about what's happening in Star Trek. So yeah, we're very excited about that. We love doing TREKnological, and we love doing it for you. So thank you so much. Now, we are part of a podcast network. If you didn't already know that, we are part of the Geek, so to speak, podcast network. And basically what that means is that we are we share the airwaves with our zaddy of the network, which is Geek, so to speak, which is a geek news podcast going through some branding changes. I don't want to spoil anything, but after this week, next week, we'll be able to talk all about these changes. So, or actually, I take that back. It might be 2 weeks because technically TREKnological records before Geek, so to speak.
Ooh-wee.
So we have that. But anyways, as I mentioned in the Captain's Log, my name is Captain Schaff, but I couldn't do what I do without my co-host with the most, my co-captain. Let's hear it for Captain Vactor. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. I'm ready to energize, Shaw. You know, actually, before we started recording, I was feeling a little bit drained, a little bit tired. But as soon as those lights came on, as soon as the camera came on, and I was thinking about Strange New Worlds, I got a jolt of energy, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah. You know what? Today, it's interesting. My newest child, my newborn baby daughter, Sage, she has had kind of a rough day today. So I just want to put it out there. If our listeners can hear just the faint crying in the background of a newborn baby, that is my child. That is Sage, Cadet Sage. And, you know, I'll put her in the brig if I have to, but, you know, she is a baby after all. And that's kind of part of the nature of TREKnological is, you know, we're dads to young kids. And so we're doing our best to really, have time to geek out over Star Trek, as well as be there for our wives and our families. So with that in mind, we really appreciate your understanding. If you hear any cries in the background or anything like that, we'll do our very best to shield it for you. But just a heads up, little disclaimer. Now, definitely, as I mentioned, we are part of the podcast network. So we've got Geek, so to speak, as our parent podcast, and then we also have 2 other podcasts in addition to TREKnological. We have a video game podcast called Sandbox Gamers, which Vactor is a co-host on. And that's a lot of fun. They talk about video game news as well as anything they're playing that week. So it really gives you a nice idea of what's out there to play. A lot of fun. And then also there is a comic book podcast called We Love Comics, featuring none other than Captain Vactor, as well as Lieutenant Seabury, Marcus Seabury, and the occasional, what should we call him? We'll say Ensign Camp.
Ooh,
Ensign Hunter Camp. So they talk. Vactor, I don't want to steal your thunder, but you have two types of episodes, right? You have a pull list where you're talking about what you read that week.
Correct.
And then you also have a giant size where you're going into more deep dives and discussions, maybe even into themes related to the comic books in general, right?
Yes. And we're trying kind of different formats. We're trying to see what sticks, but the overall goal is to just talk comics and whatever books we're reading, whatever topics come up to our mind, those are the main things. But specifically, the format is kind of fluid. So right now we're doing the pull list episodes, the smaller ones, and then the giant size, which are the topic episodes. And hopefully we can get Captain Schaff on very soon, because there's a ton of storylines that I want to talk about with Schaff. So hopefully we'll get him on soon.
Yeah, at the very least, what I've been able to do is send over some voicemails, and he's put those on the pod, which is nice. So that's cool. But anyways, please check out our other podcasts. They're probably the easiest way to find all of them would be to go to geeksotospeak.com/network, and we'll have all of them listed, and you can go directly to the links according to those things. So with that in mind, Vactor, let's set a course for the nearest planet, Maximum Warp.
Aye, sir. Course laid in.
Roll that beautiful bean footage. Captain Vactor, meet me in the transporter room where we'll beam down to the planet's surface to search for Trek news.
Aye, sir. On my way.
2 to beam down. All right, let's scan the planet's surface for any sign of Trek news.
I found some Trek news, Captain Schaff.
Excellent. What kind of stories did you find?
Well, over on StarTrek.com, we've got a plethora of things that all of our listeners will enjoy. But specifically, the Hollywood Reporter has an interview with star Ethan Peck, who talks about Spock and the new series. Schaff, in particular, Captain Schaff, will enjoy the Playmobil Star Trek Enterprise set, which you can save $142 on, Schaff? 24%.
It's a crazy
off?
discount. It's a crazy discount. Now, granted, this thing is normally like $500.
Woo!
So I mean, you're saving money, but it's still really pricey. But if you're a true Trekkie, then you got to get your hands on the Playmobil Star Trek USS Enterprise.
How much in gold pressed latinum?
I wish I could acquire that with some platinum.
TrekMovie.com has a story all about how they created the Strange New Worlds engineering set. It's a virtual production tech tour. So that's kind of cool. You can check that out. We got some political news, Schaff. Star Trek had a woke takedown, and George Takei reacted to Fox News headline stating that Star Trek was never political. So we've got those things on.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to me. Like, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but with Strange New Worlds, they were like, oh boy, here we go. Star Trek's woke. It's like, Star Trek has always been woke, bro.
From the beginning.
Always. It's always been allegorical to what is going on currently in the news around the world. So real hot button issues, racism, prejudice, poverty, whatever, you name it. They've found a way to talk about it and do so in a way that is so like roundabout that doesn't even like register to you right away, but you feel something because you're like, oh wait, this resonates with me. Why? Because we're experiencing it. So Star Trek has always been woke. So everybody needs to just calm down.
We've got a new game on the way, Schaff, based on Star Trek Prodigy. It's called Star Trek Prodigy Supernova. So you can check that out. There's an interview with Marjorie Simkin all about Strange New Worlds. You can check that out. And as always, Shoff, the Ready Room with Will Wheaton has Rebecca Romaine and writer Akila Cooper on talking about Prejudice and Una's Secret, which we're going to talk about in today's episode. Also, Carl Urban gave an update on Star Trek IV. That's nice. One of the actors actually knows what's going on, apparently.
He probably still doesn't have a script, though.
Yeah. And there's also some little fun tidbits on StarTrek.com about how food and drink tell Starship stories and a 101 on the Kirk family. So all those and more in our show notes.
That's awesome. On the what was it? The Ready Room, there was actually a nice snippet about Sam Kirk.
Yep. Which we talked about last week.
Yeah, which was really cool, but they kind of expanded on that, and it helped kind of iron out some of the confusion that we had last week. Definitely for me, because it realized that he doesn't die right away. Like, he doesn't die until Captain Kirk is in command. So, I don't think we're going to see Sam Kirk kick the bucket red shirt style on this show, which will be interesting. Then he'll probably just either they'll share the bridge if Kirk is coming on as like a lieutenant or something like that. I don't know. It'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting.
And that's not the same actor, right? That's playing Sam and Tiberius, because in the original series, as we saw in that Ready Room, as you'll see if you watch it, it's actually William Shatner playing both characters. One with the mustache.
That's right, with the mustache. Yeah.
But in Strange New Worlds, it is two different actors, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. It is two different actors. Yeah.
So we'll see.
So yeah, wow, lots of Star Trek news. So definitely, please check that out in our episode notes. We'll have all that waiting there for you, so you can dig into it. And you're welcome. With that, let's go ahead and talk about the episode. So the episode is called Ghosts of Illyria, and the synopsis reads: the USS Enterprise encounters a contagion that ravages the ship. One by one, the entire crew is incapacitated except for number one, Una Chin Riley, who must now confront a secret she's been hiding as she races to find a cure. Ghosts of Illyria was written by Bill Wolkoff and Akila Cooper with direction from Leslie Hope. Akila Cooper, as Vactor mentioned, was a guest on The Ready Room, hosted by Wheaton, and she was a lot of fun. She was a very insightful person, I thought. That was a good conversation that they had together.
Yeah.
So I guess first things first, we don't want to spoil anybody who hasn't had a chance to watch this episode of Strange New World. So with that, let's throw up a red alert, and gives you a chance to go ahead and press pause, maybe listen to a previous episode, or just get your butt over to Paramount Plus so you can watch the episode, and then you can come back and listen to our commentary afterwards. So with that in mind, Captain Vactor, I wanted to get your thoughts. So normally, for our listeners, Vactor and I are having conversations pretty regularly on Discord or text message or whatever, but we're in regular contact about the Star Trek shows. And usually we're like, oh man, like we have like immediately as soon as we finish it, we're like, did you see that? It was great when blah, blah, blah. And this week there was no conversation about this episode. And it has me a little worried because that to me means that Vactor probably didn't like this episode, but that's purely speculation. So Captain Vactor, set the record straight. Did you or did you not like this episode?
I very much liked this episode. I think what happened this week was normally you get a chance to watch the show first, and I wait for your cue. It didn't come this week.
It didn't. You're right.
So I was like, oh, I guess he didn't want to talk about it. So I didn't respond. I didn't say anything. But yeah, this one is just another, like, it's in that same wheelhouse, like I was saying previously, of classic Trek and what I expect from episodic Trek. We talked about a little bit in our news segment. The allegories are right on point. The like having an actual issue inside of, it's almost like the medicine inside of the cake or the dessert. that's what I feel like when I'm watching Strange New Worlds now. It's like I'm
Ah,
getting the medicine, I'm getting the political allegories, I'm getting the interesting, how to be a better person, how to be better in humanity's sake, and at the same time, I'm getting cake because I'm getting this fantastic television show, and the writing is great, the humor, the action, all of these things are great for a 45-minute show. So I really enjoyed episode 3.
episode 3 was interesting. It was it definitely gave us, it follows in that same format of being character centric. Specifically, we're getting a lot more backstory or information about number one, who, and I didn't realize this because this is full disclosure. The original series is not my favorite, and the only reason why it's not my favorite to watch is because I the special effects can be tough for me to swallow in terms of like when I'm watching it. I find myself too focused on, oh, this looks crappy.
Right.
This looks really chintzy.
Right.
Like this is clearly made of cardboard or
Yeah.
whatever. Like it takes me out of it. Whereas the newer shows, everything is so like pristine.
Right.
Everything looks so like so real that it's very easy for me to get enthralled in the story. So it's harder for me with the original series, but I didn't know this, that number one was only in one episode, The Cage, and she was only in for like 7 minutes. And she was played by Majeel Barrett Roddenberry, who ended up also playing Nurse Chapel in the original series. So she played two characters in the first season, but only because the first episode, the pilot, didn't air. Like the cage was not a thing. So, or was only seen in like the menagerie, right? Like it was seen in
for a
a future
flashback.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Which that was really helpful for me on the Ready Room when they talked about that, because I didn't have that background either. I was kind of like you, Shoff. Growing up, I was not a fan of the original series. I was always a Next Generation guy, but I was able to suspend a lot of my
Disbelief.
with those type of. And did you see the remastered versions that they put out? I don't know if it was for Blu-ray or for Laserdisc.
No, I didn't.
Those are actually kind of interesting because they updated everything that is outside of the ship. So all of the ships in space, they updated it with modern CG.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so that helped. And I was like, man, that's actually really interesting that they could take everything that was outside of the ship and kind of modernize it. But then on the inside, you still have the same, oh, that's a foam, prop or whatever. So for me, I have been able to suspend my disbelief and enjoy just the stories of the original series. And I thought that was actually pretty powerful, that these are 50-year-old stories, and they're still resonating today. A lot of the themes that were in there, and racism and different things, bigotry, sexism, all of those things are still resonating today, but they're also just good stories because I would watch them in reruns and I would be like, oh, this is it. I wasn't planning on watching it, but it hooked me. The storyline hooked me, and I got that with the original series a lot. So I think just being able to, it is, I agree with you 100%. It's difficult to watch it when we're watching our modern stuff now.
True. Yeah.
But also the shows that we grew up with are starting to get to that point now. Cause like I'll show my wife either Next Generation or Voyager. And even with Voyager, where it's like, it's not 4K, it's not, up-res. And so I'm like, yeah, this was originally shot for television in the 90s. So that's why it looks this way. And then some of the special effects, I think those are starting to show their age in a lot of those shows now. So it's going to become even more apparent, for us and for our children. Suspend your disbelief on the special effects, but the stories are what matter the most, the characters and the stories. So that's what I've been able to take away from original series now.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So we got that deeper dive into number one, who really hasn't had a whole lot of screen time otherwise. So that's great. We also got a lot of more information about Dr. Mbenga, who also was sort of like scattered in his appearances in the original series.
Right.
And part of me actually, by the end of the episode, felt more interested in what was going on with him than what was going on with number one.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's because, we'll just get it right out of the way, number one reveals herself to be an Illyrian. And that's why she, with this whole contagion and everything, even though she gets infected, her body basically, due to her genetic engineering, processes it and gets rid of it, like cures herself of it. And she's been harboring this secret all this time, and Starfleet has a whole thing against the Illyrians and whatever. But like, even though it was a surprise, I didn't see that coming, that she was an Illyrian. It just didn't seem to hold a lot of weight for me. Like, the reveal felt weak. I don't know how to describe it, but it just, to me, the bigger reveal, the more interesting reveal, and the one that was like, wow, this is wild, is the fact that the Doctor has been keeping his daughter in stasis within the relays of the emergency transporter in the medical bay. It's like, what?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, you can keep them in the buffer, like that to me, I was like, I want to know more about this. Like, this is wild. This is wild to me. So that,
do you think it's Rebecca Romaine, her performance, or do you think it's just the way they're writing number one, that it's just not?
I hate to say it, but I think, yeah, you bring up a good point. I think part of it is Rebecca Romaine. I think she's a little wooden to me.
And she was always like that for me, you know, in the 90s and early 2000s, she was always more, you know, an aesthetically pleasing actress rather than an Oscar-winning actress. Like I was never watching X-Men Mystique for her acting ability. So, yeah, Rebecca Romaine.
And if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but she started out as a swimsuit model.
Yeah, I believe that is right. And
I mean, my friend had the magazine. I didn't have the magazine.
Yeah. So, but all these years later,
like,
I don't think her acting has improved that much. And I get it. I feel her delivery is a little bit wooden, and her character is not that interesting either. So far, hopefully with this new reveal, maybe they'll give her some more depth and some more nuance. But yeah, so far she was my least favorite of the crew.
I was laughing initially when they were all reaching for like light, and the Doctor was like, yeah, they all are in vitamin D deficiency. And I was like, oh man, they all need some of that D. Just give them the D.
This is where Shaw's mind goes, listeners.
Some things that stood out to me was the visual effects for the ion storm. Really cool.
Yes.
Especially the shots, not just on the planet, but also the shots of how big the ion storm was.
Right.
Like,
yeah, just
coming off of the planet in like the general space around the planet. Like, that was really, really cool. And it looked pretty menacing. Like, it looked like the worst storm you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, I really liked that. The lightning effects and everything was very well done.
Yeah. Another thing that stood out to me was Hemmer, right? So we get Chief Engineer Hemmer, a little bit more screen time with him.
Right.
And for lack of a better word, I know this is a family-friendly show, but he's another D word. Not a good one. Like, I don't know how I feel about this guy. Like, granted, as in he's an alien species. He's an Aenean, I think is what they described, an Andorian, but he's an albino Andorian, and he's basically blind. Like, he's so emotionless. He's so abrasive. Mm-hmm. He's so raw. And to me, I'm like, and every other Andorian that we've ever seen on Star Trek, they've always been really like passionate, but like in your face. So like that part is still the same, but I've never seen one that's so emotionless in the
Right.
process. So this is just a unique, approach to this character as well. And I'm not sure how I feel about it either, because it makes him really hard to like him.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. For me, it was the blindness. I thought, in the same way that I like Daredevil, the Marvel superhero Daredevil, it's fun to see him using that the blindness almost as his power. That when he caught the thing that Spock threw, and using that, I think made me like him. But like you said, the abrasiveness that he shows towards the rest of the crew, it's almost like what we see in Spock, what we see in Data, the monotone, like emotion wise, but with being a jerk to people. We don't get that we like Data, we like Spock. So I wonder if they had to add that just to be different, just to set him aside from the other emotionless characters. But we'll see where it goes for the rest of the season. I think he may end up being one of the fan favorites by the end of this show, but I think I'll be interested to see where they go with his storylines and maybe his backstory, or what drives him, what motivates him and pushes him forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right on. I was glad that they finally addressed the elephant in the room with La'an, who sometimes they refer to as Lon. Like, I've heard them say it both ways. I'm like, what is the correct way to say it? I want to get it right. But anyways, they finally addressed the elephant in the room of her being a descendant of Khan Noonien Singh, from, of course, the famous Space Seed episode. And basically, like, the augment hero of the 90s, according to Star Trek lore, during the eugenics wars. And I was just glad that they finally kind of talked about that and gave a little bit more context to that, because to me, I was like, wow, you're going to have a Noonien Singh on the bridge of the Enterprise? Now, granted, this is before the events of the Space Seed episode, so it's not like anyone's even aware of Khan still floating around on a sleeper ship.
It's
like,
just for us, the audience. We know we have knowledge that they don't have.
Yeah, and which is cool too, because, and Ready Room mentioned this, and I was like, this would be wild, but I don't think they could do it without messing up the continuity of things. But the fact that she doesn't know that her ancestor is on a sleeper ship, just hanging out in stasis, and in 10 years' time or less is going to have his revenge, and then subsequently have another revenge later on.
Right.
So,
and I wonder how this is going to play into, or if it will play in at all, the Picard reveal of the Project Sing, or what was it? Project Khan.
Project Khan,
in Picard. I wonder, what is their plans for Khan? Because it seems like it's hovering over, but will they ever use that, or is it just going to be an Easter egg for the fans and it just nothing becomes of it? Because if that's the case, for me, that would be a little bit disappointing, because what's the point in mentioning Khan or mentioning anything if you're not going to do something with it? Like you said, if he's floating out in space, are they going to make her the Khan stand-in or something? Like maybe she turns, or something. Because we've seen this before in other shows where you know what's going to happen, and there's a parallel between characters, and sometimes that character will do the exact same actions as the other character from another timeline, and it's just like, well, I already have that. I already saw that story before, so why am I seeing it again? So hopefully it's not the case, but we'll see. In this one.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it was strictly so that they could expand on Una Chin Riley's backstory. And so they've got that. She's the foil to La'an's character. I think we'll definitely see more ripples over the next season, over this season, I mean, for the fact that now she's outed, like the crew all knows.
Right. Yeah, I
what she
wonder
is.
because her reaction, Laan's reaction, was like the most volatile versus the doctor and the nurse's reaction. Like obviously they were in a situation where it was a medical emergency, so they weren't necessarily focusing on that. But we saw with Pike's reaction. I don't care. You're the best first officer. I don't care what your background is. And that was, I think, more of the allegory of everything. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I wonder what they're gonna, what is the purpose of Laan being so hostile and volatile, and is that going to play into the future?
If you had to pick which character that we haven't seen yet get a character centric episode,
Ooh,
who would you want to see?
uh, man, it's like I was saying, I like pretty much all of the characters. So you could go down the list, for me, but maybe more of the doctors, like you said, more of the doctor's storyline and seeing what he does with his daughter, and maybe even the backstory of how that. I'm sure we're gonna get that, the backstory of how that happened, but yeah, maybe the doctor.
Yeah, I think if I wanted to know more, like granted, yes, we got a little taste of that Mbenga thing. I hope there's more to it. I also hope nothing bad happens to him. Like my thought after we found out about this whole buffer thing about his daughter being in stasis, I'm like, what if something happened to him? If no one knew besides him this like dirty secret of how he's trying to keep his daughter alive, like what would she would just stay in the buffer? No one would know, like, or the systems would get flushed and she would cease to be. Like, that's crazy, man. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that number one is in on it so that she can provide, as she said, a special power allocation to that transporter for that purpose. So like,
Yeah.
that's great.
Well, also we can relate to that, being dads now, of doing anything for your child to make sure that they have a healthy and happy life. And it also brings to me, as a comic book fan, a little bit of Mr. Freeze vibes of trying to keep his wife alive.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, it's an interesting storyline. I want to see where it goes, but I think he has a potential to have a really good solo episode.
Yeah. I also want to know more about Nurse Chapel.
Yes.
I'd like to see more about her because she seems like a fun, spunky character.
Yeah.
And then also Lieutenant Ortegas.
Yes.
She's the helmsman. She's interesting.
Yeah,
Like,
we haven't
she
seen very much from her.
and she had very little screen time in episode 3. She was just in like a hallway, and that's when she caught that dude starting to undress and stick his head through the window. So
Right. Right now,
I was like,
she's
"What
just,
is going on here?"
right now she's just a haircut. That's basically what she's
Yeah,
been
she
so
is. And
far.
it's a cool haircut. I'm gonna start
Yeah.
asking for the Ortegas when I go to the barber next time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, all in all, to me, this episode of the 3 of the episodes was, it's hard. I don't want to call it the weakest, but
Right.
if I had to rank them so far, this 3rd episode is the worst of the 3.
Yeah, and I think
Doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's not as good as the other 2, which set the bar pretty high.
right, because I think what we talked about, and I think in my captain's log, I was talking about it, where the quality was going up, and so it's very difficult to build on that every week. Just get better and better and better.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But this does what you want it to do. It doesn't drop the ball. It keeps it, it keeps it level basically. So that's what I want out of these episodes, where either it's going to be a fantastic episode and we're going to just love, the level of quality, or it's going to be like this one where I feel like it was a solid episode. It was like a journeyman episode, a workman episode where it does exactly what it's supposed to, gives us all of the classic Trek stuff, gives us more backstory. Like you said, there are some bombshells dropped in this episode, whether it be, number one's background or the doctor's daughter, even on the planet with Pike. I was about to say Kirk, with Pike and Spock, those colonists being the monsters, being the colonists. You had a bunch of little mysteries and drops on here, but the overall episode, it was just solid. It wasn't fantastic and it wasn't terrible. It was just right in the middle for me. So yeah, I think I liked it. I didn't love it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I also like that I almost called him Kirk as well. The Pike and Spock stuff on the surface, with some cool special effects. And even though I felt it was a little predictable that the colonists were in fact those energy beings, it didn't like ruin the reveal to me at all. It just felt really cool. So, so I mean, we're approaching the 4th episode. We're almost at the halfway point of this season. That's crazy, man. I will say this, and as far as from like a life updates perspective, moving away from the episode discussion, I'm proud to say that I was able to get my wife to watch the first episode of Strange New Worlds this past week. And she really liked it. Nice. So I fully believe that she might even be interested in watching more episodes of the season. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. But it is wife approved.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah, hopefully my...
Husband tested, wife approved.
Hopefully my wife can join very shortly. And then she can also start listening to this podcast, because then she will have seen the episode and know what's going on.
Yeah. There we go. Any interesting things to report for the week, Captain Vactor?
Not particularly. I did get a couple new video games, including the Evil Dead game. So I'm going to be playing that and talking about it on our video game show, The Sandbox Gamers. So that's
nice.
Kind of what's been going on in my wheelhouse.
Perfect. Big things for me. I've been starting packing because in 10 weeks time, we're going to be moving to the state of Washington. So I started today in my office, specifically my office closet, which was like full of boxes, Lego boxes and boxes of where action figures previously lived. And of course, all that's left in these boxes are like the extra hands. You know, you like don't know what to do with. So I was going through all that stuff and starting to organize, and I'll start packing everything up over these next few weeks. I wanted to get a jump start on it because it's so difficult to pack with a newborn. So it's like you got to like take it in chunks.
Yeah,
and just
I know
like
that.
Dip away at it.
I know that.
Of course, I work from home, as Vactor knows, and many of our listeners probably do too. So there's only so much I can really pack up right now until it's time to go. So some of the things I'll have to wait till the last minute, but it's all good. Like my PS5, my Xbox Series X, those are the last things to pack. Okay. Also, I read all of Saga, a comic book written by Brian K. Vaughan and art by Fiona. What is her name?
All right. I was second guessing myself. It's Fiona Staples. I was like, wait a minute.
Fiona Staples.
It's too easy. Staples. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we got that. And that was a Vactor suggestion, and it's an excellent comic book, especially if you're a parent.
Yes.
Because you can truly appreciate the struggles of just tending to your children and things like that. So
I'll tell you, I started reading Saga before I became a father, and I took a break. And I took such a long break, I forgot what happened. So I went back to the beginning and read it again. But I was a father at that point, and it was completely different. It was like, this writer is a father. I understand his struggles that he's putting in here because I am now a father. So it definitely reads differently after you've become a parent.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I blazed through 58 issues, and the 59th issue comes out next week, I believe.
Yes.
So looking forward to that. And that's pretty much all I have to report for the week. Looking forward to more Strange New Worlds, honestly. Just keep them coming.
Yeah.
Keep them coming. I love them. So thank you so much, folks, for listening to our episode. As far as if you're looking for us on social media, then you would find us on Instagram and Twitter at TREKNOPOD. And then, as I mentioned at the earlier part of the episode, we were talking about being part of a podcast network, the Geek So To Speak podcast network, which of course features Geek So To Speak, our parent podcast, as well as the Sandbox Gamers, our video game podcast, and We Love Comics, our, you guessed it, comic book podcast, in addition to, of course, TREKnological, your Star Trek Shakedown. You would go to www.geekso2speak.com/network to check out all the details on that. Now, we know Star Trek is something that usually is shared in the family. Somebody gets you into it, and then you get somebody else into it, or maybe it's a friend as well. But we would ask then as well that you would share the gift of TREKnological with someone else in your family or another friend, because there's got to be another Trekkie in your life, and we just all deserve to hang out together and be Trek fans together. So we would love if you would pass along the good word of TREKnological, and if you get a chance, there's a few ways to basically say hi to us. One, of course, is to rate us and review us, and you can do that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. From time to time, I may actually add some questions on Spotify, which you can actually interact with us with, so that's a great way to do that. There's some polling questions, things like that, so look for that on Spotify. Also, on our episode notes, there's a link at the way bottom for Anchor, specifically so you can send us a voicemail or you can support the podcast monetarily. So whatever you'd like to do, we would love to hear from you in any way, shape, or form. So that would be awesome. Now, looking forward to next week, where we'll continue our recap and review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And with that, Captain Vactor, I believe our mission of the week is complete. Schaffenvactor here, 2 to beam up.
Live long and prosper!